So I am not necessarily going to call to order the combined open meeting of Wednesday, June 21st, because we don't have a quorum for region. But can the two committees that do have a quorum call yourselves into order?
I've called the Southfield School Committee into order for the June 21st combined school committee meeting.
Great. And,
I will call the Northborough School Committee into session for the same meeting.
okay. And I will call the regional school committee meeting into session for June 21st, 2017.
And what about the union? Do we have a quorum? We have two from Northborough. How about
We
from
have a quorum of the
Southborough?
union, right?
Okay,
Yeah, we have a quorum. Okay,
Okay.
so who's union? You're union.
I'm
Okay.
union. I'd like to call into,
Oops, sorry.
and at this time, I'd like to call into session the union supervisory, union number 3.
Okay, excellent, then let's get moving. All right, number 1 on the agenda is audience sharing. There being none, let's go to item number 2, action on the minutes for the combined open meeting minutes of May 17th, 2017.
Madam Chair, there is one slight correction, and that is Keith LaBelle is here this evening, but wasn't that night. So we have corrected minutes with Keith listed as, Mr. LaBelle listed as absent, and there is also a cross-out in another location in the document. If anyone would like corrected minutes, I do have them available.
Okay. Paul,
So for the region, I move that we approve the combined open meeting minutes of May 17th, 2017.
Second for the region?
okay, moved by Paul Buckus, seconded by Joan,
And it's the same for Southborough and the union?
and moved by Jerry,
Second.
and seconded by Roger.
And did the union second?
Second. And, okay, seconded for Southborough by Roger, seconded for the Union by Mary Beth.
I make the motion for Northborough to accept.
Moved by Joan for Northborough, seconded by, second, Susan. That's everyone. Okay. Any discussion? Patty?
We noted on page 2, Mr. LaBelle did not, he previously accepted the role of secretary. Wasn't present that evening, so
Oh, because he wasn't present?
to accept.
It's hard to do.
All right, so, so we'll make that change as well. Are all the committees and all of their motions okay with that change? Any other discussion? Anybody against that? Okay, all right, so, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the combined meeting of Algonquin Reach, at the combined meeting of Wednesday, May 17th, 2017, as amended, raise your hand. That is, everybody's saying yes except Keith.
Mary
Abstain, and Keith is abstaining.
Mary Beth.
Mary Beth.
Oh, sorry.
What?
I didn't
Oh,
see,
I
did
said
you?
yes.
Okay, yeah, I thought I said yes. Okay, so one abstention with Keith. Okay. Next on the agenda is the NSPACK presentation, their annual update.
I think the light's on. Can you hear me? Okay, she's giving me a thumbs up. First, let me apologize that I don't have a hard copy available for all of you. It's kind of put together, unfortunately, at the last minute, just because it's got so much density to it. I will try to go through it as quickly as possible, and please feel free to pause at any time to ask me any questions. We can get a hard copy to you or electronic copy to you. We'll also make it available on our Facebook page, so anybody can take a look at it. And primarily what's in here is a copy of what we obtained from our annual survey. And
Can I interrupt 1 second? Could you just introduce yourself? And
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, I sort of,
Low blood sugar today. So I'm Cynthia Moore. I'm the current NSPAC president. I have been for a couple of years. I know I've seen a lot of you over the years. I'm actually joined here by several former and current officers in the back, Ruth Reeves on the right, Liz Nolan in the middle, and Christine Cobb on the left there. So what I'm going to do tonight is just recap a little bit about what NSPAC is, just add a couple little details about that might help for people who are unfamiliar with what NSPAC is. Provide you with the names of the new officers for next year. Give you some of the information about our survey results that we collected throughout the year, and then answer any questions that you have. I'm in the unenviable position of, and then I forgot to tell you the one last thing. And then we're going to tell you about the great celebration we had. Okay, so we always have good celebrations, although we don't talk about them enough. Here, Roger, I know you kind of need something to see up close. So again, if I'm not speaking slow enough or loud enough, please just let me know. Or if I'm technologically inept, just bear with me. Okay. Yay, slide 1. So this is like the same exact slide that we show every year. It's a little boring, right? What is NSPAC? So NSPAC is created by actually a state law. It's the Massachusetts Chapter 71, Section B law. It's kind of long. It's about 5 paragraphs. It's actually worth reading. And inside of it, it says that every school district is supposed to have a special education advisory committee or council. They're often called CPACs. Most districts have 1 per district, so typically you'd have 3. And we happen to have a regional one, which I think is really good because all of our kids end up going to the same high school, and we share a lot of the same resources, doctors, professionals, things like that. So I think it's really good we have one. Our duties are on the far left bottom column. They include but are not limited to advising the school committee members on matters regarding special education and safety, students with disabilities, to meet regularly with school officials and school committees, and to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of special education programs. That's a pretty big charge. And the folks that volunteer for NSPAC are pretty much parents, although you don't have to be one. Anybody who's interested in special education in general in the community can be a member. And because we all have very busy lives, you know, we have to narrow what our focus is every year and allocate that amount of time we have available. So on the right-hand side, you'll see just a couple quick statistics. Today we represent about 700 families in the 3 districts. That's a drop of 200 families since last year's numbers, which was kind of curious, but we never got a chance to look into that. And then what do we try to deliver? This is directly from our website. Thank you, Liz, for rewriting it. Thank you, Christine, for keeping it up and running. We try to direct input into district activities. We provide ongoing educational programming to the community on a variety of topics. We helpfully provide resources for support, problem solving, and improvement to the lives of our members. Sometimes it could be as simple as, who's your podiatrist? Who's your developmental pediatrician? To more complicated issues like, how do you get more nursing out of Mass Health? Or what do I do with a child that has this particular issue? We also provide them with a network of families that have experiences dealing with different types of difficulties, whether it's hospitalizations or obtaining social services supports. And we even get outreach from people who are thinking of moving to our community. And last but not least, we're fortunate that we partner with other SPED PACs in the area, Grafton, West Boylston, Hudson, Marlborough. A lot of other CPACs come and ask us to either co-sponsor programs with them so that we have a broader reach, or to, you know, as a courtesy, let their folks come to our events, or to advertise their events. Every CPAC's a little bit different, but it's the same slide every year, and that's what we do. So primarily when you talk about special education, you're talking about a couple of laws. The big one is IDEA, and it's the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. And before that, it was called the Educating Every Handicapped Person or something. I put it in the resources, and it's like dates back to 1975. So it's been around for a really long time. But I just wanted to share these 2 points with you, taken directly from the actual law itself, that disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the rights of individuals to participate in or contribute to society, and that improving the educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy. And it goes on to specifically state that that includes not just opportunity of participation, but development of skills and readiness for independent living, economic self-sufficiency. And included in that, embedded in that, is also post-secondary education for those who seek that, or trade opportunities for those who seek that sort of vocation. One of my favorite parts of this law actually is the purpose. The very first purpose that it states is to ensure that the children with disabilities have to them available a free and appropriate public education. Oftentimes you hear the word FAPE, F-A-P-E. That's what they're referring to, FAPE. That emphasizes special education and related services. Related services means things like speech language services, physical therapy services, assistive technology. Sometimes it's the wheelchair-equipped van. That's a related service. Designed to meet their unique needs. It's really important to take a pause and just think about their. It doesn't say unique needs in general. It says their unique needs, meaning the individual child's unique needs. And to prepare them for, again, future education, employment, and independent living. That's a pretty big charge. So that's really what we talk about the most when we talk about special education, and that's what the PAC in general focuses on, the contents of the promises of IDEA. When we talk about IEP, which is an individual education plan, that's actually how IDEA is implemented for a child with a disability. So IEP, individual education plan, sometimes you'll see it referred to as a program, but we call it a plan here in Massachusetts. And I just took a couple of quick quotes from some sources, including the recent Supreme Court decision that just clarifies what's meant by when we say an IEP. So last year we talked about, I forget if it was 71% or 81% of all of our students with disabilities are integrated in our district, which is fabulous. We talked about that, and we also talked about that when you're integrated, even to some extent, that you have the expectation for high levels of achievement. High levels of achievement mean advancing from grade to grade, accessing the curriculum, and it also means, with the caveat of in light of the child's unique circumstances. So you may have a child who is integrated and who is able to advance from grade to grade, but they need a lighter version of the curriculum. Or you have a child who's disabled, who's gifted, who may need a more intense or rigorous version of the curriculum. And then, of course, the third bullet down talks about that the IEPs must be aligned with the state academic content standards for each grade in which the child's enrolled. So the assumption, except for those with significant impairments, is that a child will have access to the generalized curriculum. They will have access that's appropriate to the grade in which they're in, and that they will be given supports and services which will enable them to continue that access or to close the gap if one exists. And the last part I threw in there, just so people know, even though there's like an annual IEP meeting, it's actually meant to be a living, breathing document. So that's where a lot of the work comes in. That's where like the staff really spends a lot of their time, and where the parents come to the table and engage the staff is in looking at the ongoing data that's collected, looking at how we need to make adjustments to the individual plan, and making sure that we're on track with where we're planning on going. And that's really where the bulk of all the activity comes in. Any questions so far? No? Okay, probably self-evident. So inside the IDEA, as well as Section 504 and civil rights, are all embedded two things. One is your right to participation as a parent. And the second thing is right to enforcement. So in other words, if somebody's not letting you participate, you've got a right to do something about it. The interesting thing is that Massachusetts went one step further, and when it created its state plan for IDEA compliance, it created this other role, the CPAC role. And the CPAC role was just to enhance the opportunities for parents and districts and school committees to talk with each other and collaborate with each other on innovation and solutions. So instead of waiting for individual solutions to percolate up, to actually formalize it into a working structure. And it's pretty unique. There are other states that have this that are slightly different than how Massachusetts does it. And every district inside of Massachusetts kind of decides, every CPAC kind of decides how they're going to do it. And so what you see this year in terms of our member survey may not be how the PAC officers decide to do the PAC next year. They may decide they have different priorities. So for this year, our priority was to do a couple things. One was to elect new officers. So here's our new officers. Some names you've seen before. Jen Jones coming back as president. Ruth Reed is co-vice president. I forgot Veronica. She's going to beat me on the head for that one. Veronica Frada is coming back next year from Southborough to also be a co-president. And Deb Roberts is going to continue as treasurer. And thankfully, Liz Nolan has agreed to join us as secretary, quite a big role. And so next year, one of those people or all those people will be standing up here giving you presentations. So the next kind of things I'm going to talk to you about are what have we been told or what do we know that we need, all right? And this is for you guys to figure out next year with the officers what to do and how to do it. I'm just the messenger. So what does an NSPAC need? Ideally, a PAC works the best when there's one representative from each school committee who's actually engaged with the PAC itself. So the PAC doesn't actually have that many meetings. We have lots of like educational seminars, and there's a support group that like has a bunch of people who are from this town or other towns. But really our PAC meetings are about once a quarter. And this year, the PAC officers are aiming to deliver this summer, hopefully by July, a schedule of what all those meetings are going to be next year. So they'll all be laid out, they'll all be known, the dates, the times, the places, so it'll be easier for other people to engage with us. We also need a relationship where the information goes back and forth, so we are able to collaborate. Coming once a year doesn't really help very much. We don't want to surprise anybody with information. We don't want our folks to feel like information isn't being passed along or acted upon. We want to fulfill our role as advising to enable you all to do your role. So I know that one of the things the PAC had talked about was doing more than one annual formal presentation. Again, that's for you to work out with the officers next year. Another item is that the PAC usually does annual expenditures. So there's the expenditure, the Go the Distance Award, which Christine has been very generous in helping us in terms of technology and food and things like that. And we've also gotten sponsors like Wegmans and Roach Brothers and Starbucks and a photographer to help us out. But there's other activities as well. And we're going to be looking for next year's officers to define what those needs are and to communicate them. And given that, you know, we're already working on a budget many years from now, we're not working on next year's budget, they'll have to roll that process in with you guys. And last but not least, the PAC and its members are looking for the school committee to be responsive to what its members are saying their concerns are, to track on their concerns and to proactively report out on them. The SPED department, Marie Allen, and the superintendent and the assistant superintendent have done a great job trying to do that with us through the PAC. But I think that we need to together have a broader communication so that more information gets out to more parents in a more consistent way, or parents have one way to look for the information. So that's the basic, that's the PAC need. The next items are all our survey results. So I tried to break it up a little bit so it's not all words. I apologize, it's not snazzy and things aren't flying in. That's not really my talent. But anyways, so what we did was we created a survey and we solicited input. We solicited input online. We solicited input via emails. We solicited input via hard copy at the Go the Distance Award. So we specifically targeted a bunch of parents who are really happy. You know, they nominated 60 people for awards, and we asked them, what is it that you want? What is it that you have? What is it you appreciate? What is it that you need? So I'll go through some of the key findings here with you. First of all, we as a PAC found that our constituents, our members, would like to have their meetings mornings, evenings, and weekends. So that leaves afternoons free for us. So next year's PAC officers have a challenge in trying to find the right mix of those three in order to reach their constituents. And the number one barrier to participation in any of our events seems to be babysitting. which is understandable. Because a lot of our children aren't folks that you can leave at home alone for very long, right? Or it's bedtime and you wouldn't leave them alone bedtime, or they need homework done, etc. So just a couple brief statistics. 52% of the respondents were from Northborough, 24% from Southborough, 20% from Algonquin, and the other 2% were actually teachers that we received responses from. And then the children that are the parents in our district were broken down by this demographic, with the majority of them being between 6 to 10 and 11 to 13.
So the percentage of respondents, Northborough compared to Southborough is a significant difference. Are you thinking on a reason for that difference? Is something that can be shared, or?
If I were to conjecture, I don't have an analysis, but if I were to conjecture, it would be that more Northborough parents provided awards for the Go the Distance Awards night than Southborough parents did. Because that's where the majority of our responses came from.
How many responses did you get?
I forgot. South of 40. So it's still a good number considering we have 70. So just some insights. Out of the kids, the parents who responded, you can see that almost all of them have their child either in full or partial inclusion. So really what we're talking about are people who their responses and their information, and this is literally verbatim, everything I'm going to show you is their words, not mine. These responses are coming from people who live and breathe in our community, live and breathe in our school, minus the 2 people, right? One's residential and one's out of district. So when we asked for positive feedback, we literally got 4 responses. These are the 4 responses we received. Fidget tools and standing desks, which are accommodations. Those are great accommodations to have. Amazing foundation for students to be included at all levels. Now that's actually, that point, that second bullet point, is one of the things that we as the PAC talk to other parents about when other parents ask us, what's your district like? What's it like going to school there? We talk about how important our community is, how important it is to our community, how dedicated our community is to inclusion, and to trying to find a way for our children to actually be in the least restrictive environment. So we talk about that as a value statement. Unified track and best buddies. Okay, so those were the 4 positive feedback things that we received. The wish list was pretty long. What we asked for was, this is the exact question, which 2 things do you wish existed in our district that does not today? Okay? And I'll tell you, I asked this question myself of a couple of other people in a couple other districts, and who are also in PACs and other districts and stuff, and I had such different responses from them. So when I asked them just to kind of get a flavor, I received things like, I wish we had yoga. I wish that we had full breakfast for all kids in the morning. So I heard more of like enrichment or basic need kind of wish list things than I did about what do we need to change. So the wording is really slow and small. And again, this is not my words. These are from surveys. So I tried to group them together into categories. Some of this stuff is already planned for and in process, either in next year's budget or in the year after. We have heard the superintendent talk about it. We've seen it come up in school committee conversations. But I think what some of this points to is that there's a disconnect in the communication between having our plans and having the information get to everybody who needs to know about it, okay? So the first thing, administrative needs. And I put that first just because it makes me the most uncomfortable. So I want to say the most uncomfortable things first and then move on from there. So one of the things that was on there was that we should reward administration based upon disabled students' outcome, not budget. When they say outcome, we do have some state statistics in terms of how many people graduate who have disabilities. They tried to collect information about how many people pursue post-secondary education after they graduate. I'm not so sure that information is reliable on a state basis. I think it really kind of depends on volunteer people responding. So that's an area that came across. One of the areas that came up, this second bullet point actually came up before when we had asked some information about people's thoughts on the new Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. Report on the number of accepted, rejected, or partially rejected IEPs as a measure of quality. So one of the things that we found was something like, and Greg, you'll have to correct me, 17% or 20%, something like that, of the Algonquin Regional High School's IEPs are rejected. That's a huge number. In the entire state, this entire state's like 198,000 students. There's roughly 10,800 rejected IEPs. So the actual percentage of rejected IEPs across the entire state is very small. However, in our district, they're higher than average, and not just in Algonquin, but in the other districts. So I think that that's part of where this is coming from. Report on the number of IEP objectives not met. We hear that a lot from parents. We hear a lot from parents about how the team spends a lot of time, including the parents, and they design an IEP. They can design a very finitely detailed IEP. And they can spend a lot of time delivering services and a lot of time reporting on services. But in the end of the day, the objectives aren't met. And so that's a problem because the IEP itself, like we mentioned earlier, is a living, breathing document. So when we know we've gone off track or we think we're going to go off track, we're supposed to get back together again and make adjustments. So I think that reporting on the number of IEP objectives not met is a feeling from parents. You know, it's based upon feeling, right? It's based upon, like, my kid got to the end of the year, didn't meet their objectives. How do I feel about that? Increase accountability and ownership of struggling readers and a strategy on how to improve. Now, like I said earlier, I know that next year's budget and the budget after that includes information and programming focused on reading, whether we're calling it the language-based learning program or we're talking about co-teaching models. There's been a lot of thought behind that, but what this feedback tells me is that the detail about the decisions is not making it back to the constituents. Last but not least is increased community involvement for job training. And what that means to a parent is you might have a teenager who has a disability and they really need job training as part of their special education. So they want that job training to not just be something reasonably close to home, but they want it to be appropriate to that child. So for example, if you have a child who has a desire to do something with computers, they shouldn't be vacuuming hallways in some hotel, right? And I'm just giving that not as an actual example, just as a general. That's what we're talking about when parents say community involvement for job training. The next bullet points I kind of grouped together under staffing needs of each school. And if you think about it, the first three all just go back to the reading. And this reading theme comes through again and again and again throughout our survey. Orton Gillingham certified staff or fellow, there are 2 different levels of certification. Wilson Reading level 2 certifications, LIPS certified. And one of the things that's really good about our district is that we have reading specialists. We have people who have a lot of training. We're not a district that tends to have a lot of people right out of teaching, right out of their college education. So I think some of this is a gap in staffing of what we have and staffing of what we want, which is probably part of our future plan regarding like the language-based learning classroom. And I think that some of it is also parents not understanding what their kid needs And so they hear a buzzword, they hear Orton Gillingham, or they hear Wilson this, or Lips that, and they think that that's going to be their solution. So we need to do a better job telling them, what do we have? What are we providing and why? This last comment, better transition planning not thrown together at the last minute. Transition planning is this weird word. Transition is when your child is, in general, 14 or older. What you do is you start planning for their post-secondary life. So what do they want to be? They want to be an astronaut? What do they want to be? And then you kind of map out what skills and deficits do they have, and how do we close those gaps to position them to be able to enroll in aeronautics school or culinary arts school or whatever it is that they want to do. It's an individualized planning process. It's part of the IEP, and folks aren't really feeling like it's handled in a very formal way. The next two I'm going to skip over because you can just read them yourself. But I think that they're just reflective of, our opportunity to improve our relationship with the community. And I think that through communication, or even just a standard communication, like this is our plan, this is what we're doing, I think that we can eliminate some of those feelings. The next side, on the right-hand side, are three topics: compliance, communication need, and programming needs. So compliance, and again, these are verbatim from surveys, handwritten or typed in. Written policies, written procedures as required by state and federal law. There's a feeling that there's not either, or all, or some, or where they're supposed to be, they're absent, or not applied equally. There is a feeling that child find, which is an interesting concept. Child find is a mandate by which a district must go out and find the children who have disabilities. So a district's not allowed to wait for you to come to ask. They're supposed to go out and find the children who have disabilities in their communities and offer to evaluate a child. So there's a feeling from this respondent that child find is actually limited only to parents who are asking. So I think maybe some communication around what is our child find process, what are we doing, when do we do it, how often do we do it, what are the results of what we've been doing, I think will help overcome that gap between perception and reality. Meaningful and appropriate ESY programming or out-of-district ESY placements. So ESY is extended school year. And again, this concept's a little bit strange. Extended school year means education that is beyond the normal 180 days, okay? And when it's generally talked about, people are usually talking about the summer, although it can be far more than the summer, but most people are just talking about the summer. And when we talk about appropriate and meaningful, it's sort of like those two words are very loaded. They appropriate and meaningful is an individualized term. So what's appropriate and meaningful to my profile as a disabled student is different than what is appropriate and meaningful to another student. And some of those core commonalities between what that other student and I would have in common are things that are embedded in IDEA. For example, if I'm a child who has my education delivered in regular education, I'm included. And my services are usually brought into that general ed classroom. And I need summer programming, the ESY, in order to continue to have my progress maintained. Then my experience during the summer needs to also include non-disabled students. So we've been working a long time on ESY together between the PAC and the superintendent and the SPED department, and a lot of progress has been made. A lot of innovation has been tried. But I think that the feeling is that we're still missing the mark. From a communication need, details on the curriculum, and I know that we all have curriculum nights, all the schools have curriculum nights, but I think what's missing is parents who have special education children don't understand how it is that their IEP matches up with the curriculum. Okay, so for example, I could have an IEP and be taught the same exact thing as everybody else in the classroom. Or I can have an IEP and I could be taught something different. I could still be receiving a 5th grade education, but I could be taught something different. So I think this is a parent education part. I don't think it's necessarily when are we teaching algebra. I think this question is more like, help me understand what the curriculum means to my own IEP. From a methodology standpoint and a peer-reviewed research standpoint, there continues to be a lot of confusion with parents around the district's recommending in our IEP that we're going to use this program. And we have an amazing amount of programs, far more than many other districts do. But they're going to use this program with my child. And the parents are very confused by that. They're either confused because they've never heard of the program, or they're confused because they didn't know that that program, that methodology, works with the type of disability their kid has. And when they've asked for information, peer-reviewed research to help them understand this parent education portion of it, they haven't gotten what they need in order to feel comfortable. So I think this is, again, a parent education opportunity where together we can partner and give more information, right? And then tangent to that is the educating parents on how the methodology matches to the goals and enables them to access or achieve the grade level content. So in other words, if we use this methodology and I learn how to read fluently, then I will be able to access grade level curriculum when? So I think, again, it's really sort of connecting the dots to the parents of what it means. Because I think that we have a lot of educated parents in our community, very articulate parents, and I think that sometimes we make the assumption that they understand how all those dots connect together, because the educators, everybody else in the room, understands how those dots connect together, but the parents don't. So this is another opportunity for us to educate them. From a programming need.
Cynthia?
Yep.
I'm going to interrupt you only because we have 11 agenda items, and this is only our first meeting, and we have a second meeting tonight with 2 executive sessions.
Great.
So you have an incredible amount of information on, and I also have so I can see what's coming up, and it's all information that I don't want you to curtail. I don't want you to, just go through it quickly. So I will do anything that you would like to do. Do you want to maybe come back in September with part 2? Do you want to, because we just have, the lights go off at 10.
That's okay. Oh, believe me, my son's waiting at home.
I know. So what we could do is you had this request for more interaction between the liaisons.
Right.
So what we could do is maybe the liaisons from the school committee sit down and go through the rest of the presentation and the rest of your survey results and your and your requests. Or we could do it, like I said, part 2 in September. We can do whatever you'd like, but I don't want to cut you off, I guess what I'm saying. So how would you like to proceed?
Well, I think that, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Well, there's 3 slides left.
Okay.
And the appendix was provided so you guys can go out and read stuff on your own if you want to. And not to steal the thunder, but the 3rd slide says, we celebrated once again the wonderful achievement of our community.
Right.
60 people were honored.
Right.
And there's actually a website linked to that, which gives you a whole photo array, a photo video. What do you call it? A video of photos, right, of the event itself. So that's really good. So I think we could probably get through the next 2 slides in less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then what I'd love to do is to have those liaisons set up a formal meeting with the new PAC officers to come up with what's the process going to be for picking apart priorities or discerning what's communication, what do we not need to just get more communication out about, and what's action.
Okay.
And I would leave it up to them to organize it with you directly.
We can absolutely do that.
That sound good? Ladies? Sound good? Officers? Yeah, okay. They're giving me the thumbs up back there. Okay. So, programming needs, parent training, life skills education, structured wellness, mindfulness programs, neurofeedback offering. That was a new one. I hadn't seen that before. You guys can look it up if you don't know what that is. And then the greatest concerns, you know, some of these were a mix of individual issues. Like if you have a child who's on a 504 and you think you should be an IEP, you need to do something about that yourself. That's an individual responsiveness action item. That's not an action item for the whole community. But I didn't want to pick and choose and have people not feel that they weren't heard. They took the time to respond. We should let them know that we shared the information. There are a lot of opportunities for programming on here. Again, ESY comes up. Teen programming comes up. Research-based interventions, again, come up. Dyslexia comes up. There's a concern about the difference between the language-based program or having a few classes. I think the community needs more education in that regard. Executive functioning comes up. Nutrition in the brain. And then on the bottom of this list, not to demean the rest of it, is the van pool transportation performance. And I just want to compliment again Marie for setting up, is it next week? I think it's next week, right? The evening conversation with Vanpool to talk about any concerns and to get people comfortable with that for next year. That's the exact type of collaborative opportunity that all these survey results present to us. And that responsiveness is really embraced by the community. It brings everybody's level of anxiety down. And I would bet that had that notice gone out about that meeting ahead of time, this never would have appeared on the, survey. But they're months apart between when it was replied to and when you sent out the item. So, and last but not least, the top requested workshops that we got. And now these are the types of workshops that in the past NSPACK has provided to the community. I think a lot of these are things that the PAC can partner with the district to provide. Like this year, the district did things with Marie and otherwise. They did an anxiety night. They did a night on different types of programming. They did a night on ESY. So I think this list gives us an opportunity to try to divide and conquer between what can the PAC do and what is the school already planning on doing, or what can we provide to the community through our partnerships with other CPACs. So for example, Hopkinton has asked us to co-sponsor their Introduction to Transition Planning in October. So that one's easy. Hopkinton's running it. We don't have to do anything about it. We just have to tell our folks that that's when it's available. And it doesn't cost us any money because Hopkinton's running it. So I think that that's the opportunity for next year for folks to try to divide and conquer. And last but not least, the Go the Distance Award. And I have to tell you, I was unfortunately sick for this one, wasn't able to get there. We had 60 wonderful, tear-jerking, touching submissions about extraordinary things that our staff or people in the community have done for our children and our families in our community in order to foster inclusion and development and a sense of well-being and a sense of community. And, we could never pull off that event without the dedicated parents who volunteer countless hours, including the officers, to pull together all the details, without the generosity of Christine organizing for us, cupcakes and all the different facility stuff and, various cleaning up things. And then our community, the photographer, a couple of the restaurants, the coffee providers, they all chipped in, which is wonderful. And, and that is part of what we're looking forward to doing next year. NSPACK would like to spend a little bit more time next year on the fun stuff and a lot less time on the uncomfortable stuff. And that's why we bring it up here, because we know that together as a partnership, we can divide and conquer. So that's our entire presentation. And I really look forward to next year and the officers working with you guys to accomplish the goals that were set out. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions?
Patty?
If I may just quickly point out that on the wish list, a number of those items are something that parents even parents that don't have a children on an IEP wish for. So it's nice that you shared this with us because we'd love to work together, and I feel like some of these things should be for everyone.
Yes, yes.
And-
I don't know if you could hear what Patty said. Patty said that, if I can paraphrase, is that she was glad to see some of these items on the wish list because they are some things that every parent, regardless of whether their child has disabilities or not, wishes were part of the educational or community experience. And bringing the awareness of this desire helps all of us.
Exactly. Thank you.
Anything else?
Kathleen?
No? Thank you
Jo-
all.
hold on, Joan.
Appreciate your time. Oh, Joan has a
Yeah,
question? Joan
I
has a
have
question.
I just have a comment, is that I appreciate all the effort that you put together into this report and with your officers. And I think that one of the things that I would like to see for next year is, I know that the special ed department here does a lot of wonderful things. And we're blessed to have the staff that we have. And due to the budget constraints that we have, the towns in both communities have supported all the time. The financial boards have always supported any increase in the special ed costs that we've had. And we've always, every member, former, present, and past, has always fought for the special ed department. But what was concerning to me was that, and I appreciate all the wish list and everything, but I like to see a balance between the positive and the negative. And I saw the positive, there was only 4 items that were there. So
Right.
if that could come back, and I would like to see what, if there's anything else that's more positive to what is taking place in our district, because I will stand up and say that I think our district does an outstanding job. There isn't any part of education that cannot be better, and we can always do better, but we also have to sing our praises. And I'd
Right.
like to see that not just 4 comments are about positive, but that there are more things that we're doing, because we're working as hard as we can. And maybe
I think perhaps you missed the part where we said we celebrated 60 people who
Why not?
were.
But on the slide here, there's only 4 positive
Right, in our
feedbacks.
survey, we literally only received 4 positive comments. So,
Thank you. That's
just
it's
reporting how it
comment.
is, only 4 people out of all the respondents chose to provide a positive comment. But on the flip side, we have an entire night that we dedicate, 60 hours to perhaps, preparing for, delivering, cleaning up for, sending out information afterwards, where we celebrate not only the community, but all 3 school districts. And we've been doing that now for 7 years. And I'd say roughly celebrated 360 accomplishments in the last 7 years. So we take a lot of time and energy to collect that positive feedback and to actually put a very bright spotlight on celebrating the achievements.
Thank you.
Christine?
So I'd like to thank the PAC, those in the audience, those who are newly elected, Cindy for another outstanding presentation. A lot of the information that you shared is certainly things that we've heard before, but it's nice to have that information back in front of us once again. And looking forward to next year, I also would like to commend our special ed department for working tirelessly to continue to expand our programming. The next on the agenda is the coordinated program review, and that's done by the Department of Ed, and that will provide a lot of valuable information to the committee and to the community about really the outcomes of a very significant and complicated audit that takes place probably every 7 years? 6 years, and all of what goes into that. So I think it will give a broader perspective on the special ed programming. I'm also pleased to see that Cynthia added many things that we've talked about for probably a couple years. One of them is the partnership and the outreach that the district has done to the PAC to plan these events that were listed. This past year, actually, I think Keith, you were there, may have been there when we talked about how we can do more planning to do workshops, and the district offered to co-host or sponsor a number of these. So that's underway, and we'll certainly continue to engage PAC in the process and encourage them to participate in those that we regularly offer. And that's a big part of our conversation when we meet. PAC has a variety of meetings throughout the year, and we also have the superintendent's sort of offline meeting that we started about 4 years ago, and I know Marie meets regularly with the PAC officers attended a couple of the presentations this year. We actually had, I thought, an excellent, well-attended event a couple of months ago about the programs that we're starting. So again, we do a lot of outreach in the community. So I think, as you pointed out, we are a district that continues to thrive on innovation, parental and community engagement, and to find new and different ways to reach out to our community, and that will never stop. So this information is helpful, and we will certainly use that as a guide as we continue our mini meetings throughout the year on this topic, whether it's those we attend because PAC sponsors some coffee hours and things like that, or whether it's the meeting that we sponsor formally and as the superintendent. So we'll be using this as a guiding document to validate the things, and there are many that we already do, to continue to expand and enrich the things that we need to, and to grow together to offer more of what we do in a variety of ways to engage more people. So appreciate that some of this was shared, and we will certainly continue to work in partnership. I'm also excited about the school committee. I would say that the school committee tends to be active. It's not as if there aren't liaisons at the meeting. Keith has been to a number, Mary Beth has attended as the Southborough liaison, so we do have, Kathleen regularly attended, so we do have liaisons appointed, and tonight we're going to take up the issue of subcommittees as we move, we have at the meetings we've already had, and I know regional will take that up again tonight. So I actually welcome the opportunity to meet with PAC, with the school committee liaison, so that we can share in the communication process, and to continue to work on some of these items. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. And the conversation continues, because the next item on the agenda is the coordinated program review update.
Yes, Marie, here's the rest of the story, as they say. And this is the DESI side of all the work that you've been doing over the last couple of months to make sure we are in full compliance with our requirements.
That is, yes.
And actually, I have the letter, too, so if you want to quote verbatim from the review and the process, it's right there.
Okay, I have it. Okay, so every 6 years, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education conducts a multi-program review of compliance in certain regulated program areas through what is known as the Coordinated Program Review, or more fondly called CPR. Our 3 districts are scheduled for a CPR visit, an on-site visit during the next school year, 2017-18, and during May 2018. So all 3 districts will be visited at that time. To prepare for that visit, we've completed an exhaustive self-assessment for compliance on federal and state requirements, and we submitted it through a web-based monitoring system in 3 areas. The first area is special education, and there are approximately, 40 different elements that we need to take a look at. One of those being a sampling of special education student records for compliance, and the other part being reviewing special ed documentation requirements that actually show that we are complying with all the federal and state mandates. We assess the policies and procedures for compliance in all those areas, for both that and then our English learners' compliance. There's also a sampling of those student records, and we have to provide evidence that we are meeting all of the federal and state mandates. And then there's another portion, which is civil rights, and that one, we review documentation requirements, and we also provide examples for compliance in those areas. This self-assessment activity was completed on May 18th of this year and took many months of data gathering and collaboration among staff and administration. And I'm very grateful for all the assistance and collaboration to achieve such an exhaustive data gathering process and a timely submission of data. We were on time, and we met the May 18th mark. We had a lot of support from Superintendent Johnson, Assistant Superintendent Martineau. All of our building administrators were involved in the process of data gathering. My 2 assistants, directors, Deb Lemieux and Stacy Glickman, as well as Rhoda Webb, our EL director, and everyone in Student Support Services and the general ed team. So it really was a huge collaborative effort, and I'm very grateful for all of the collaboration. Our next steps, like I said, we have a CPR review in each of our 3 districts in May, and we will be visited by the Department of Ed. A final report on compliance will follow, and hopefully that will give us more information to confirm some of the great things we're doing in our district and some of the things that we may need to improve. That report will be shared with you once it's available. And a mid-cycle review is also conducted after this 6-year cycle audit. In 3 years, we have to come back to the table and provide evidence that we're meeting anything that we have been asked to do a corrective action plan. So that's really the process, and we're looking forward to it.
She says with a
Tongue in
smile.
Any questions?
Joan?
Can I ask a question that was not pertaining to your report? That I know that you always come back in the fall and tell us about the summer programs, that you have the summer program. So if you, I mean, you don't have to give me numbers or anything, but how is that going, and when will the program be starting in the summer? You know, what schools?
It's going very well. We're fully staffed at this point. The program starts on July 3rd and runs through August 3rd. And then we also have a 7-week program. So we have 5-week programs, 7-week programs, and we have various workshops. So we have our robotics piece is being carried on for our pragmatics population. So we have a lot of programs housed in various buildings. I didn't bring my details. I gave
Oh,
it
you
to the
didn't have to,
Southborough School
I was just wondering
Committee.
how it was going, like the organization.
Very well,
for it.
very well, and we're all set up to go. The buildings have been set up, the rooms have been assigned, so we're in good shape
You're in good shape, okay.
to start. Yeah.
When you said workshop, can I follow up? When you mentioned workshops, are you referring workshops that those students will be attending, or is it
Yes.
workshops for teachers? What was the
No,
workshop?
that the students will be
So
attending.
these are like enrichment programs, like you said, the robotics?
Yes, there'll
That's
be
what I'll be-
programming, robotics, there's Minecraft. We
Oh.
added those last year, and we're
Nice.
continuing because of the positive response that we received.
Fantastic. Well, good luck, because usually education stops teachers and everything, but I know in all districts, they have a summer program. And just congratulations to having this and to keep it ongoing so that the education is there's no summer slump for these students, so I really appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Atlas Curriculum Mapping Update.
Assistant Superintendent Martineau will provide the presentation, but I am delighted to be able to share that we have finished our Atlas travels, at least this part of the journey. We launched a fairly extensive curriculum district-wide mapping initiative to ensure that our curriculum in all content areas at all grade areas was not only aligned with the standards, but aligned from grade to grade so that transitioning made sense in terms of curriculum. We launched this in 2012 and formed something called the Atlas Ambassadors, so that we had an opportunity to have folks out in the districts working side by side with our teachers to assist them in using this tool called Atlas, which is really what it is. It's a depository, if you will, of all of our curriculum content. It's interesting, curriculum was mentioned earlier in Cynthia's presentation, and I wanted to chirp in that, oh, wait, we have some good news to share. We've been calling this a construction zone for the last 4 years, and really asked everyone to be a little patient while we really enrich this Atlas site with examples for the parent community of what we teach in terms of overarching content across the grades and in all disciplines. So tonight is the first public unveiling of this. We actually shared this with our teachers and our administrators, and just very excited about the amount of commitment on everyone's part to make sure this came to fruition. We projected, or in 2012, in its infancy and original thought, about a 3 to 5 year window to complete, and we're on target and a little earlier. And I want to certainly commend Greg for sort of taking the baton as we were continuing that journey down the road and doing a masterful job to bring this into fruition when he arrived 3 years ago. And all the folks, you'll see the names, who have stayed with us since it was just a thought in 2012 as Atlas ambassadors, and they continue to do so. So with that, I promised I wouldn't say too much because Greg was, don't say what I'm going to say. So we tried to, I think I'm okay, right, Greg? I didn't really.
You said everything I was going to
Oh, no, I didn't. I saw your presentation. No, we practiced.
So, you know, as Christine said, I have the pleasure this evening of giving you an update on the curriculum mapping initiative. You know, talk about the goals that were set in 2012, 5 years ago. So I'm going to take 1 minute per year, so I will be 5 minutes, but no promises on that. So we'll talk about the overarching goals, kind of review the historical timeline, and share one of the important outcomes, which is transparency of our curriculum and an unveiling of the public access to our curriculum. So as Christine said, like with any successful initiative, it does take a team to make it come alive. We had the leadership team, we had curriculum leaders, principals really involved in this initiative over the past 5 years. But there's one core group that kind of championed this cause for 5 years, and that is the Atlas ambassadors. They truly persevered year after year and really led this and helped it come to fruition. So I just want to acknowledge those folks because they really did outstanding work. So this was actually a chart that Christine emailed me a couple weeks ago. She said, look what I found. This is from 2012 and one of the initial meetings, and it talked about what the outcomes of this work hopefully would be. So they talked about examining present and practices, ensuring we're moving in the right direction, collaboration, equity of access, aligned with a common core, and transparency. So you'll see this evening that a lot of those goals have been accomplished, and it's always, again, nice to see a vision come to fruition. This is, again, some of the meetings that took place in 2012. And when I look at the faces at the table continuing this work are the same, which is great. And I think that speaks to the success and why we've had success, because we've had consistency in terms of people implementing the work. 1 second. So a curriculum mapping roadmap. When we look at curriculum mapping, we really set a goal around making sure that we develop a process to map our curriculum so that's aligned, connected with standards, and is really outcome-based. And we did this really for a number of reasons. Some of the reasons were equity of the curriculum, so that regardless of which teacher you had, what course you were taking, there was consistency in practice, and it didn't matter which teacher you had in first grade. If you had any of our first grade teachers across our 7 elementary schools, there was equity in terms of learning experience. We also talked about a tool for collaboration that a lot of great work was done, and we really needed a robust tool to be able to collaborate and share the great work that was happening. And also to develop a tool to allow us to adapt and be flexible in terms of changes that were coming forth. In 2012, there were a lot of curriculum changes that were taking place at the state level. For example, the math and ELA frameworks were new. So really developing a tool that would allow us to adapt and be flexible in terms of changes that were taking place. So in terms of the roadmap, really looking at it in 2 parts. From 2012 to 2014, so we established a curriculum development process so that we had consistency in terms of when we're talking about curriculum development, we had consistent language. So we adopted understanding by design. And it was really a simple process. It's really thinking about what we want students to know, be able to do, and then how will we measure, how will we assess if they have reached those goals, and then lastly, what are the learning pathways that we would establish. We identified a curriculum mapping tool, Atlas, so that's our database where we store and share information around curriculum. We established Atlas ambassadors. We trained curriculum leaders, trained educators, and then all of our educators embarked on a diary mapping, which basically is every educator basically mapped what they were teaching throughout the year. So at the end of 2014, we had a data set. We had hundreds and hundreds of maps of what teachers were teaching. And we used that data set to move forward to build consensus maps. So 2014 to 17 was really focused on collaboration consensus, and we established model curriculum maps. So again, a common course has a common model curriculum map, and whoever was teaching that course would use that map as the foundation to move forward. We created model curriculum maps K through 12 in all content areas, and we have established public access to curriculum. So where are we today? In June 2017, 5 years later. So we have a consistent curriculum development process. We have a digital organizational tool. We have a consensus curriculum K through 12. We have a very proactive approach to adjust and modify curriculum. And we have the ability to share curriculum and transfer knowledge with ease. So if we have a new educator entering our system, we can provide that educator with curriculum. Or if we have a teacher teaching a different grade level or a different course, they have access to the curriculum. And we're ready to launch our public access to curriculum maps. So in terms of curriculum mapping, one of our goals was also transparency. On our chart at the very bottom, you see transparency was a goal. This evening, I'll share with you what that looks like. We have two levels of access, really. Educator access, they have access to all stages, 3 stages of our curriculum, stage 1, 2, and 3. They also have access to ongoing analytics, so they can run reports, they can look for vertical alignment, they can look for gaps, but they also can see any other curriculum that is being taught in the district. For example, a 7th grade teacher can see the 8th grade math curriculum, but also can see the 6th grade math curriculum and the 5th grade math curriculum. So it allows for a lot of flexibility. And it allows for updating and editing rights. And then we have the public access, which is really giving the community access to our curriculum pre-K through 12, content, knowledge, and skills. And tonight I'll demonstrate what that looks like. So this is actually our public website. And it's quite simple. And there are 2 options. You can search or browse the curriculum. So I'm going to just hit browse. And I'm going to browse curriculum maps. And what you can do is you can filter by school, elementary, middle, or high school. You can look at grade, by subject, and by map type. The public really only can look at the model curriculum maps. The teacher maps are only accessible to teachers. So I'm going to select elementary, and I'll do browse. So these are some of the elementary model curriculum maps. You know, for example, in art, you see art 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and art K. So again, those are the maps that our art teachers are using across our 2 districts to teach in terms of the curriculum. And if I look at grade 3, I'll open up a map. So this is an example of what a parent or a community member can see. They can see the learning standards benchmarks to be assessed. So again, what content, knowledge, and skills that we hope to achieve through this particular curriculum or unit. They can see the content, skills, and essential questions. And there's also a course description. We'll look at a high school example. We'll do two ends of the spectrum. So high school, we'll do browse. We'll look at AP stats. Again, so you see the unit title, the learning standards, content, skills, and essential questions, and the course description. So at the high school level, the program of studies, if you were to look at the program of studies, you then would be able to log into Atlas and actually view any particular course that is being taught and look at the standards, the units, and skills and essential questions. This also gives parents the ability to print and export if they wish. So we have model curriculum maps K through 12 in most of the content areas, with the exception of science. K through 8, because the science has changed, we're in the process of updating those maps and publishing. Our K through 12 health curriculum is in draft form, so teachers have access to it, and we're fine-tuning it, and that will be ready to publish in the near future. And my presentation is not cooperating with me tonight. So the road ahead. So what's nice is this no longer is an initiative. It's really embedded in practice. So we're not going to be talking about this curriculum mapping initiative. It's something that's embedded in our work and ongoing, something that we've made a practice in our district. So every year we'll add new units, modify where needed. We're going to add our K-8 science units, realign history and social science curriculum. The Mass DSE is working on our framework update. We're going to add our health curriculum and look at making interdisciplinary connections. And the last thing I would say is I think this is a great example of the district's philosophy. 10 schools, 3 districts, 1 community of learners. This really is, I think, a hallmark of the great things that the district accomplishes through that philosophy. And this, again, is a celebration and the commitment of a lot of work on a lot of folks. So I'm happy to share this with the committee, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Joan?
Okay, I'll narrate. You can cut me off. I mean, as an educator, this is a wonderful thing, but the time that goes into it is unbelievable to get to this point, even for educators. I mean, this has to be one of the hardest things to do, but when it's done, it is wonderful. It's such a valuable tool. So I applaud all the educators in all 3 districts and all the schools, because I think this is phenomenal. My question was, I know you answered the goal for updating. The other one was, because I understand it, but can you explain it for the audience what the essential questions are? And then my piggyback to that was, is there going to be an appendix somewhere that if a parent is looking at this, they may not know what an essential question is. Mm-hmm. And would that be explained? And if there are any other unknown terms that aren't in the lingo of the parents will not be aware of, there could be an appendix. So great. I think it's a great point. I think we can definitely add some of the terms that are unique to education so that parents and community members can get a sense of what those mean. But basically, an essential question, as we look at the variety of questions that are asked over the course of a unit, essential questions are those key questions that we really want to hone in on and have students focus on. So what is, for example, the AP stats, an essential question may be, what is stats and how does it impact my life? So it's really getting in at the core of the learning, focusing on the key questions. And just the last one. Okay. The model units, does it go the whole length? Like if a parent went to the model unit for science in 3rd grade, would it be a September to June? Would they see model units that would be for the whole year, or is it just maybe one that would take 6 weeks in the beginning of the year?
So the model curriculum map would be basically the learning pathway for that entire year and would include all the units that were being taught.
Especially for when we have people that move into the district or want to see, or for communication. I think it's just another communication tool that we have for the parents to see, and that they understand what their kids are going to be studying, and people, especially when people move in from different districts, different states. The curriculum may vary, but this is absolutely wonderful. Congratulations. That's a lot of hard work.
I know.
Good. Congratulations.
I have to agree with Joan's comments. As a former special education related service provider, this is like gold. As an educator, also as a parent in the district, to have access to this is just phenomenal. So thank you so much for all the work on it. Is it already live?
So it is not live, but after this evening, we will remove the password and we'll have the link off of each of the school's web pages.
It will be communicated. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to add that, my kids are in college, so I'm old. And they were, they went through the schools a long time ago before any of you guys were here, but it was a big problem. It was I heard more than one teacher in either of my kids' lives complain that the first month of school, they're level setting all of the class, because they all came from different teachers, and, they'd have different experiences. And that was incredibly frustrating for them. And then it was even worse when they all came to Algonquin, because then it was just exponential. So, the fact that you guys tackled this, and, I can also tell that it was an incredible amount of work, even though I'm not an educator, but, just hundreds of maps, already, that, thank you so much. And that is something that is very indicative of this district, how we go above and beyond. We don't just do the bottom rung. We absolutely reach for the top. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to make one comment that oftentimes people think something like this happens with a small group. This is one initiative that 5.5 years ago, everybody was all in. So Greg had a slide up that mentioned that all the educators were trained. Literally, every teacher was involved in this process to some degree. And the Atlas ambassadors became the on-site sort of support for those teachers. And we say 3 districts, 10 schools, it came about when we were sitting down on steps off-site saying, oh my God, what are we doing and how are we gonna make this work? And that came from the teachers in conversations around this specific initiative. And every teacher was all in, and at all grade levels. And that process continued through the 5 years with, great guidance of everyone along the way. And certainly Greg, when, coming on board as assistant superintendent, really moved this forward and made sure we stayed on track. But it's very rare when you find something that is so meaningful to educators, and every educator has some ownership on that. And one of the advantages I think that we often heard was, we taught this in second grade, or my child learned this last year. And so this really helps take away that dialogue that so often takes place. And just the ability to see what came before and what will come after is so very important. So I just want to say how proud I am of everyone who worked on this initiative, and to every educator who was involved in launching this to the public.
It's incredible. Joan?
I like to say the transparency, because I think that's one thing is we do what we do in schools, but parents may say, I don't know what's happening in school. It's, that type of thing. But this is a level of transparency that we're sharing what we're doing, and knowing that it's also evolving, because as the science standards have just been updated and changed. I think this is great. It's wonderful we have this transparency that we're able to share with the parents and any public member that would like to see it. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's going to be our motto for the year, transparency. Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Next item is the Assabet Valley Collaborative Agreement.
I'm still ready to do a Yahoo after that one, but I think we'll Yahoo it to ABC, all the way to ABC. This is actually great news for us. We have, the Assabet Valley Board of Directors has entertained a request by Auburn Public Schools to join our collaborative. And I think, again, it speaks to the vibrancy, ingenuity, the innovative programming that they offer for their job alikes. We benefit from a lot of the collaborative purchasing. We heard a little bit about van pool transportation. They are probably the largest transportation provider for special ed students in this area, certainly. Very favorable service in terms of pricing, but also in their attention to detail and providing their desire to provide the best for our students collectively. So this requires a vote from each of the school committees. I'm sure we can take this as a collective vote. And then by the end of the evening, I will also need a signature from the chairs of each committee. We have a board meeting on Friday, and one of the agenda items is to make sure that all of our school committees have seen or at least have heard of this change in the membership. So the document in front of you gives you the list of members, and I think Paul's ready to make a motion. Paul.
So for the region, I move that we accept the amended agreement for the Assabet Valley Collaborative as provided.
Second.
Moved by Paul Butko, seconded by Joan for the region. Mary Beth?
I'll move for Southborough and the Union.
Moved by Southborough and the Union. Moved by Mary Beth, Southborough and the Union. Seconded, seconded by Roger for Southborough.
Does the union have to take a vote on this?
Do they?
Union
Okay.
doesn't.
Okay.
I rescind my moving for
We
the
can.
Union.
That's fine. Mary Beth moves for
I'm just
Southborough,
moving
Roger
for
seconds
Southborough.
for Southborough.
On behalf of Northborough School Committee, I move that we accept the amended agreement as presented.
Moved for Northborough by Keith, seconded by Susan. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor? And that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is legal services
Legal
contract.
services, hard to believe, it's been 3 years, but it's been 3 years. And every 3 years, we do present to you a proposal for legal services for all 3 districts. As we know, Naomi Stoneberg, who has been a member of Brody, Hardoon, Perkins, and Keston for years and years, who served the district well for 38 years, retired last year. We tried to get her not to do that, but it just didn't work out our way. We did have an occasion to meet the attorney who is working on behalf of our 3 school committees and the district at large. Last year, Greg Pagnini was at several of our meetings. He is actually our point person now that Naomi has left, but we do recognize, as do they, that this has been a difficult transition without Naomi there. And for Greg, taking on a community, 3 communities, in terms of the work that we do each and every day has been, I think, challenging for his schedule as well. So I did speak with him and asked for a proposal. This is, there has been no change in fee structure. I did make one slight change to his proposal, and it's on the backside, which does give us the opportunity to renew at this rate at the end of the first year and the second year. I say that because I do and am concerned that we get the best service possible, and for a school district with things that happen every day, timely response is essential. And we rely on their input a lot for our policy development. So they did agree to put that one line in there, so at the end of next year, we do have the option to pursue other legal services. But I think, the fact that they maintained a favorable rate structure is very advantageous to us when things are going only one way, and it's usually up. Paul?
For the region, I move that we accept the retainer agreement that, between us and Brody, Hardoon, Perkins, and Keston LLP, attorneys at law, as provided.
Second.
Moved by Paul Butko, seconded by Lynn for Southborough. Moved by Mary Beth. Southborough. Do we need union?
No.
Okay.
For Northborough.
Moved by Joan, seconded by Keith for Southborough, seconded by Jerry. Any other, Patty?
I'm just wondering if you requested proposals from any other firms?
I did not. This is a firm that knows our district well and has serviced us well. I think when we mentioned this last time, we talked about investigating whether there was a great likelihood that they would be interested in carrying us forward as a client when Naomi left, and what that retainer would look like. We are not in billable hours. I do know in meeting and speaking with my fellow superintendents and listening to what they have to share about their legal service costs, to have an opportunity to maintain the same retainer rate and not move into a billable hour situation is very favorable, and they do know our district. Naomi is still out and about. She's called 4 or 5 times already to check in, to make sure things were fine. And, you know, while I've gotten involved in several lengthy conversations with them about situations this year, I don't mean to imply they have not been responsive. It's just not the lickety-split response that we get from Naomi, because she's quite familiar with us. That's why I did ask for sort of that after the first year option for us. So I thought that was a reasonable stance to take with our experience and the rate at this point.
Patty?
If I just may follow up with that, just to clarify that, I certainly, I'm sure that the discussions you have with your colleagues, fellow other superintendents were, you know, not to be discussed openly, but have you do confidently feel that the amount of money that this firm in this proposal is comparable to what your colleagues have expressed to you?
I do, very much so. And in fact, I think it was, if you can get it, go get it. It was a similar comment. And I do have some comparison, because we do have legal services for other areas in the district, and it is a moving target, depending on the complexity of any given incident or situation.
Paul?
So so the agreement seems to be, as far as I can tell from the first page, a 3-year contract that
Right.
commences July 1st through the end of June in 2020. The next to the last paragraph says the agreement shall expire on the end of June 2020 and is subject to annual renewal at the end of the first and second year.
Right.
Is that really saying it's cancelable at the end of the first or second year?
Yes.
So it's not renewing, it's more, we have the option to cancel.
Right.
Okay, and they understand that.
They absolutely do.
That was added on your request?
Yes, because originally it didn't have that, and I do want to give 1 more year of monitoring in terms of whether, you know, the situation may change, whether there are changes in the firm. I am concerned that we return to the more timeliness of response, and I think that will happen now that we've had a year to get to know one another a little bit better. But I also appreciate that if that doesn't happen this year, I think I will, as Patty suggested to the committee, that we definitely go out for proposals. I will say that based on the input that I've received, there aren't a lot of firms. If I had a conversation with the member districts in the AVC, there are not a lot of firms out there that are ready to take on a district at a retainer rate. In fact, it's pretty much non-existent. So that was one of my concerns as well, but have no hesitancy to do that next year, and probably would want to give an update to the committee around December or so, and just have plenty of time to make a change if we wanted to do that.
So if I could, just as a follow-up, so there's no procedure here that talks about how we fire them. You know, how much notice do you need to give them, or maybe fires may be a bad word, but, you know, if we choose not to renew, you know, do we tell them on July 1st? Do we have to tell, is there a contract, a master agreement that refers back to this, or is this the whole document?
This is it. And the understanding was, it's at our discretion, with no time. If the committee would feel more comfortable getting
No, I'm
greater
fine with it. I just-
specificity around that, that's fine, but it was
Unusual.
a pretty clear understanding.
It's favorable
Yeah,
to us.
no, it's very favorable to us. I
Right.
just,
Yeah, I haven't seen any long,
surprised.
so I think we're okay.
That's very good. All right, any other questions? No? All those in favor? And that passes unanimously.
I would ask again that you keep your pens and pencils out, so while you're signing the AVC document, I would also ask the chairs to sort of John Hancock this as well.
And on to the next thing.
There's more.
There's more.
You know,
Keep your pens out.
it's easy to get waylaid and frustrated when you take on a new project, and that certainly was the roller coaster this year with the solar update, but I am, again, delighted to share with you that I do have the final documents back from legal counsel. And I have, while it is up to the committee to give the superintendent the discretion to sign, and they are addressed to me, I would like to request that the chairs each sign their respective agreement on behalf of the town of Northborough Schools, the town of Southborough, and the region. And I did speak to Mr. Codier this morning and said, we're signing tonight. What are you doing? And he did say, we're signing as well. Mark's on vacation, so I haven't had a chance to chat with him. But I do know that we exchanged emails, and they are also going to move forward. The next question you might have is, okay, what's the timeline? So when I did receive these final documents back from our legal counsel, who actually called Ty and Bond's legal counsel to get this moving, yet again, Ty and Bond indicated that they were waiting to get them all back. When I had spoken to them about a month ago, they anticipated very little delay and felt that they could move on this quite expeditiously. So I am hopeful that the work will begin over the summer, quite frankly, and by the time we meet again in September, I'll have an update in terms of their progress. So I'm glad it's completed, at least the documents for phase 1, and so that means if we move quickly through that, we'll be into phase 2 documents next year, which is exciting. So I do have all 3 for each committee to sign as well.
Okay. Dr. Benz. Patty?
In a previous combined meeting, we were given a fantastic project schedule. I'm just trying to follow along as to where we'll be after this evening. One of the items on the project task list is a feasibility study report. Would you, can committee members here expect to have, be able to see that report in September?
I think the committees can expect to see whatever they've been able to do to move quickly on that timeline. They felt, when I spoke with them last, that they were probably going to be able to condense that, and so that it wouldn't be so elongated. And if I'm not mistaken, that timeline, I don't have it with me this evening, also includes the other phases besides phase 1. So the first phase is the smallest amount of time, the least amount of time up front, before they move into phase 2, which will really be after they have identified which of the buildings will yield the best return on investment in terms of whatever we move forward
The
and to
roof-mounted
decide.
site
Right.
structural analysis?
It was asked of me by a committee member somewhere along the way to also ask them to entertain an analysis around, about ground mounts. They did share with the subcommittee that the most expensive and the least amount of return was the ones that are sort of the most widely appreciated, and those are the car mounts, the parking lot sort of over mounts. And at that time, even with subcommittee, when we met the study group, they said, you know, it's just not a really good return. You know, there are things that people can really say, wow, this is really cool, look at that solar array, and now we can use it to park our cars under, but it's really not that great of a return. There are several school districts that have moved forward with that, and looks great, but not enough return. So we're excited about it, and more will come. Hopefully I'll get that timeline soon, and I can share it out with the chairs over the summer as well.
Need a motion or anything? To sign deals or, no?
We're just going to sign
I'm
them.
just gonna, I mean, I actually can sign because of the amount,
Yeah.
but I would prefer to ask the committee if they would. I think this is really exciting, and to have the chairs sign it would be, I think, great.
Lynn?
Just to refresh my memory, what is done in phase 1?
So,
It's been kind of a long
It
process.
has.
I thought we were already in phase 1.
Yeah. I don't, I sort of dream about it on a semi-nightly basis, so I, you know, to me, it wasn't that long ago. But what they're going to do is they're going to do an analysis of each of the sites that we've identified. So in Northborough, for example, it's all of our schools, and the town has selected some of those sites as well. In Southborough, it's all of the schools and so forth. In the region, it's the regional facility here. From that, they will do an evaluation about the potential photovoltaic installation sites and the feasibility. That's part of the study, Patty, the feasibility study is that analysis that they do, right? And so then they will report back to us what those findings are. And that's really phase 1. And from there, we have an opportunity to select how many of those, let's say all of them, are viable options. Then we get an opportunity to select some number of those. And that's been part of the discussion with this entire process. How many will we end up with? And right now, there's a, if we're able to find 2 sites or 3 sites in the Northborough School District, that probably would be a high number. And on the town side, because of the age of the roof, the location, the proximity to the sun at certain times of the day, they look at all of that, they'll rule some sites out. And then phase 2 will be based on how many total sites we decide to move forward with.
Are we gonna own these, or are we leasing them?
So part of what they provide, and one of the reasons that we felt very favorably in terms of moving forward with Ty and Bond, was that they have the capability to also provide the financial options to us. Whether we lease, whether we have a purchase power agreement with them, those are the options that we're going to be able to entertain. So at some point, whether we want to reconvene our original study, our working group, which had representation from each of the committees, as well as both towns, or if we want to continue that group and then come forward with presentations to the combined committee, we have that option. But that's one of the things that we are asking them to do for us, because we don't have the knowledge. And I think we all recognize that and thought that we really needed to find an expert with a proven track record in the field. So it's exciting.
It is very. So the 3 chairs are gonna hang around and sign yet another document. Okay, any other questions? Then moving on, the next is personnel report, which is for distribution. The next one is MASC Summer Institute for distribution, and then superintendent's evaluation. Yay! So, while I hand these out, yay! Well, it's like one of the 3 things we actually have to do. So before we start with the actual evaluation, I would like some feedback on because it was a very new process, it was a Google Forms, sort of any feedback. Was it better than prior, especially for those members who have been around a while? Is it better than past years? Is there feedback? Lynn?
So I'm not sure if I missed something, but last year, we were able to within the document, click on the evidence. Were we able to do that? I didn't.
We were? We had the folders within that.
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah. So that was helpful. I don't know if you can do it within Google Docs or how you can do it, or maybe,
Yeah, last year was it a Word document or a Google Doc?
It was a Word document.
The Word document.
But the document that, I guess I'll say document that I believe you sent around, that allowed you to link to that mapped. In other words, the evidence was in that document, so that you couldn't click in through Google, but it mapped, to the document that actually had the link to it. Which I don't think, I don't think that was extraordinarily hard to get back and forth.
well, I'm just going through 2 different documents.
that's just
It's
a nice to
last
have.
year was easier,
Okay.
a little easier in that regard, that it was right there. So maybe if, within Google Docs, if you can't have the thing on the top, just click on something that takes me, to the evidence, for that goal
Yep.
or whatever.
That'd be nice
Which
to
I
have.
found that helpful last year.
Okay, that's great.
Let's
And
see if
when
we can do it.
Work on, in September, we'll
But it was,
link the 2.
otherwise it was, really very easy and, to type in, and, I'm sure you guys didn't have to do with all the formatting issues we've had in the first year.
Jerry?
The main problem I saw with it was that when I entered it, there was a little bit of a snag getting the reason it didn't work, which is nothing, but I would have expected that when I was done, it would have emailed me okay?
It did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think maybe you were one of the first ones,
Yeah.
because,
Oh.
and maybe you brought that to light, because in
Right.
subsequent ones, I got mine emailed to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when I went in, so later on, I wasn't, I know, I said, well, look, I finished it, and then I submitted it.
Yeah,
But then when I went back in again, I don't see it anymore.
right,
And
right.
so that's confusing.
Yeah.
So, and then I said, well, did you even get it? Because I spent all that
Right,
time.
right.
And I assume that, I assume you did and
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But that's the kind of stuff I want to make sure that is that if you put the information in and you submit it,
Yeah.
it should save it in such a way that you can go in and see what you've done.
It definitely emailed it to me.
Yeah.
So that was fixed on the fly. About going back in and editing it.
Yeah, in other words, once you've done
Yeah.
something, if you go into any tool,
Yeah.
if you submit something,
Yeah.
you should actually be able to go back into that tool and see what you've submitted.
Maybe not change it, but at least see
Well, you
it.
can make it non-changeable, you
Yeah.
can make it read-only, you can do
Okay.
whatever but that would help, because you don't know whether or not you've done it. And also, you don't really, unfortunately, with the way the system is, you don't get the ability to create it and then not send, and then go back in again and.
Right.
But again, I don't wanna get too fancy, because then it's cumbersome,
Yeah.
and it'd be too difficult to do.
Yeah.
These are just some
Yeah.
suggestions.
So I'm writing the suggestions down. September's around the corner, and that would be a good time to pilot whatever revisions we make when the new goals are put in the document,
It was ever
so that we
reasonable,
can
too.
fix it as
you
we
know?
go along.
Because, you know, I mean, you don't have the time to sit there and to develop something that's gonna take you many, many hours. Just
Right, no.
As long as it can do some very basic things,
Right.
but especially being able to go back in and see what you've submitted, to make sure that it is what you did.
Right.
But if
Okay.
you had it
Oh,
checked.
sorry, Keith.
Oh,
No, go ahead, Keith.
the option was checked to allow respondents to edit their responses.
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but
And then
so,
if you check a box that says, email me my responses, you should be able to go back in and see them still in those same fields. That's how it's supposed to behave.
And you were able to do that?
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think Jerry
is
was
exactly
the
right.
guinea pig. I think he was the very first one.
And then, you know, I'll look at it again if you want at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah, that would be
That's how
great.
they normally
That would be great.
Okay.
Patty?
And I experienced a number of challenges, and I lost most of my first round.
Okay.
I couldn't get it back. It wasn't
Find it.
emailed when I thought it was submitted.
Yeah.
What I got was not mine. Yeah, I got a packet with what I thought was a copy, and it was not my responses.
No, but that wasn't a problem with the tool. That was a problem with, we weren't capturing email, so we assumed it was you. And
Yeah,
obviously
and
it wasn't.
it didn't go through. So it was, I experienced a number of challenges, but amazingly, it took a while, but I did get of course, I took screen grabs constantly the next time I did it. And it eventually came, but it took a while.
Oh, the email.
The
Wow.
email took
Yeah.
a while to come back to me.
Okay.
But I did find it extremely challenging that I couldn't go back. And I think I couldn't go back a page. Once a page was submitted, I couldn't go back to the previous page.
Yeah, I did notice, so there's something with formatting that we have to become more fluent in.
Would it be better, Patty, if they were all on the same page or more larger chunks then? So you don't have to go back?
Well, just the ability to get back in.
Yes,
Right, to save and then get back in.
To save and get back in.
Right.
right.
Just in case you say,
Yeah.
I want to
Sure.
think about this a little longer. and
Right, absolutely,
I'm hungry, I gotta go eat.
right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. I think
Anyway.
that must.
Joan?
And if Christine's taking notes, we encountered.
You are now.
You are now.
Pen again.
Is that if this goes late into the process where elections have already happened, Barbara and David, who did serve on the committee, did
Paper.
complete it, but they had to do a paper one because their NSPACK account was closed. So my suggestion is to leave it open if we can. If a member should leave or not be on the committee, leave it as a live account until the end. Because both of them did want to do it, and they did do a,
Right, a paper copy, yeah.
to make it easier for members.
Which is also an option, if you guys just want to print it out and fill it out manually. I mean, if you're having trouble and you're under a time constraint, feel free. Any other feedback? Okay, then that being said, what, yes?
Just in general, was the drop-down, that piece, helpful, the way it was structured that way? I mean, these are sort of tool-related issues that we may or may not be able to help, but just being able to check the box and then having the box underneath it to type into
And
that.
they were
Those are
buttons, not
helpful.
drop-downs.
Right, I'm
buttons,
calling them
yeah.
buttons, but they're,
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were
they
buttons.
drop down as you went through.
Right, right.
Because that was a big change from
think that was
last year.
Yeah, the only thing was what I mentioned before, other than
Yeah.
that, it was pretty,
Right.
that was fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right.
Thank you.
Then in the interest of time, what I'm going to do, because we need to read something into record, is I am just going, so the nice thing about that tool was that it took everybody's comments and created a master spreadsheet. So literally, you could just like copy and paste into a document, and I think everybody's feedback is important. So I, since it was so easy, included it in this. I am not going to read everyone's comments. So I'm just going to read the summaries at the top of each goal or standard, and you all have them in front of you, and you can read them yourself, the comments. So the 2016-17 end-of-cycle summative evaluation report for Superintendent Christine Johnson. The official evaluators are the Superintendency Union Number 3 and the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee, but we open up the evaluation process to all 20 members of the 4 committees. And the date, June 21st, 2017. Overall, it was noted that it has been another successful year and that Superintendent Johnson is better than simply proficient at her job, and she has the respect and appreciation of all committee members. She sets high standards for herself and leads by example. She has set challenging goals for herself and the district and has worked diligently to meet or exceed those goals. She is able to manage the many diverse and ever-changing facets of her job with skill, thoughtfulness, and professionalism. She is always well-informed, and her opinions are obviously well-considered and rooted in her intent to do what is best for the students and district overall. She shows real enthusiasm and excitement when talking about new initiatives and the accomplishments of our staff and students. For each of the 4 required standards, Superintendent Johnson has received either an overall proficient or an exemplary score from all members of the Superintendency Union Number 3 and the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee, who submitted evaluations for an overall 3.4 out of 4 rating. For each of the goal areas, the majority considered the goals to be met, while many considered them to have been exceeded, and there was a small number that considered that there was only significant progress made. Most who considered the goals to have made only significant progress commented that these are multi-year goals with satisfactory progress to date, or that the lack of progress was through no fault of her own. On to goals. Professional practice goal 1, engage in the development of policies, procedures, and professional development opportunities that support the district's fiscal accountability and teaching and learning practices by serving as a board member of the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, MARS. The majority of the committee members considered this goal to be met with a score of 3.35 out of 4. All the committee members were impressed by Superintendent Johnson's rapid ascension to becoming a pivotal leader in MARS. And you can read the additional comments. District Improvement Goal 1, work closely with the administrative leadership team and stakeholders to assess our alignment with the district's implementation of programs and practices with the district's strategic plan, Vision 2020, school improvement plans, and technology implementation plan. The majority of the committee members considered this goal to be met with a score of 3.12 out of 4. The general consensus was that Superintendent Johnson is laser-focused on the strategic plan and rarely makes a decision without ensuring that it is in conjunction with one of the 10 areas of focus. She has clearly communicated to all administrators that each school improvement plan and the technology plan should be aligned with the overall strategic goals of the district. Additional comments follow. District Improvement Goal 2, identify, develop, and implement practices as articulated in the Business and Financial Corrective Action Plan as presented to the school committees of Northborough Southborough and Northborough Southborough Regional in June of 2016 through documented status updates and actionable items throughout the 2016-17 school year. The majority of the committee members considered this goal to be met with a score of 3.24 out of 4. Significant effort has been made towards the development and implementation of the corrective action plan. Superintendent Johnson has continually kept the school committee advised throughout the process. Most committee members voiced confidence that she has a plan in place that has and will continue to greatly improve business and financial practices in the district. District Improvement Goal 3, explore, analyze, and facilitate the process of determining the feasibility of solar energy as a sustainable green source of funding to support the operational budgets. The majority of the committee members, prior to tonight, considered Superintendent Johnson to have made significant progress on this goal with a score of 2.53 out of 4. Through no fault of her own, this process has taken longer than anticipated, but appears to be on track for completion. The superintendent is to be commended for taking the lead on this project, which involves not only the schools in the district, but might also potentially include municipal buildings in both Northborough and Southborough. District Improvement Goal 4, negotiate collective bargaining agreements with all the Northborough Southborough and Northborough Southborough Regional collective bargaining units. The majority of the committee members considered this goal to be exceeded with a score of 3.76 out of 4. Superintendent Johnson successfully negotiated all contracts and accomplished this without requiring stakeholders to participate in one or more all-day Saturday meetings. This achievement demonstrates the general spirit of cooperation and goodwill she has fostered with teachers, aides, administrators, and others throughout the district. All negotiating was done in a completely positive format, and many issues were resolved collaboratively, with both sides ratifying without any major issues. Student Achievement Goal 1, engage in the development of leadership opportunities for administrative practices that support teaching and learning. The majority of the committee members considered this goal to be met with a score of 3.29 out of 4. Superintendent Johnson has made preemptive moves in ensuring that we have a succession of potential internal leaders to take over leadership positions in the district as our administrators retire or get promoted. Developing an in-house administrative leadership master's program demonstrated tremendous initiative. Having such a high number enrolled in the master's in administration program indicates that we have many teachers and specialists that respect our administration. We have a district where it is easy to attract new talent, and existing personnel want to remain here and grow into their next position. Student Achievement Goal 2, support administrative leadership in the identification of effective teaching and learning instructional practice strategies by supporting opportunities for collaboration and development of best practices. The majority of the committee members consider this goal to be met with a score of 3.13 out of 4. The teachers and administration who present to us are always enthusiastic about progress being made in the teaching and learning instructional practices. The digital literacy certificate endeavor was widely mentioned as a prime example of this kind of support. Standards. Standard 1, instructional leadership. The superintendent was overall rated proficient in Standard 1 instructional leadership with a score of 3.35 out of 4. All members rated her either proficient or exemplary in this area. It was widely commented that the superintendent is very knowledgeable in the area of curriculum, and this is an area of strength for her. She does an outstanding job of using data to explain student achievement, and she empowers her administrators to employ strategies that then empower staff to create rigorous standards-based units of instruction that are aligned across grade levels and content areas. Standard 2, management and operations. The superintendent was overall rated proficient/exemplary in Standard 2, management and operations, with a score of 3.53 out of 4. All members rated her either proficient or exemplary in this area. Superintendent Johnson was praised for her strength in this area. She was widely lauded for overseeing the restructuring of the finance operations, developing strong ties to the management of both towns, her effective hiring of several administrative positions, encouraging innovative programming, and her commitment to safety and the emotional health of our students. Standard 3, family and community engagement. The superintendent was overall rated proficient in Standard 3, family and community engagement, with a score of 3.29 out of 4. All members rated her either proficient or exemplary in this area. It was widely stated that Superintendent Johnson promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff through effective partnership with families, community organizations, and other stakeholders that support the mission of the school and district. Many noted her engagement with parent and community groups such as SOS, PTO, APTO, NSPACK, Superintendent's Curriculum Advisory Committee, Southborough Access Media, Superintendent's Parent Advisory Group, Full Day Kindergarten Studies, Start Time Initiative, Naming Committee, and the Southborough Municipal Technology Committee, among others. Standard 4, professional culture. The superintendent was overall rated proficient in Standard 4 professional culture with a score of 3.41 out of 4. All members rated her either proficient or exemplary in this area. Superintendent Johnson promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff through effective partnership with families, community organizations, and others. That sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. She collaborates equally well with her administrators, teachers, students, parents, community members, taxpayers, town administrators, and state legislators. Ms. Johnson promotes success for all students by nurturing and sustaining a school culture of reflective practice, high expectations, and continuous learning for staff. Superintendent Johnson truly leads by example. And in closing, the overall average score for standards 1, 2, 3, and 4 was 3.4 out of 4, with 17 of the 20 school committee members reporting. The consensus was that everyone enjoys working with her, she is passionate about our district, and she is a consummate professional. There seems to be great consensus that we all recognize the challenge of trying to lead 3 diverse districts with sometimes conflicting priorities, but we would like her to continue to lead our district for a very long time. Okay. Comments? Paul?
This is, I mean, I think it's a nice report, you know, to boil it all down. I mean, I think we're all super pleased that we hired you, when we hired you, and we're glad you're here. That's what I read here, and that's what I wrote, actually. So keep up the good work, please.
I just want to say that we couldn't have a more committed superintendent, I mean, a person who really wants to do a good job and does. So I thank you.
Yeah, it was difficult to I mean, and that's why I included all the comments, because everybody's comments were like, just across the board, all different, areas but all glowing remarks about the unbelievable number of, just positive impacts that you've had on every single aspect of being a superintendent and of, leading us among other groups. And, as it says, I mean, you can read all the individual comments for yourself, but they all basically say the same thing, which is, well done. We appreciate you.
Has anyone ever objectively tried to determine the amount of additional effort and time it takes to manage 3 school districts, 3 collective bargaining agreements compared to just one?
I'm guessing multiply by 3.
Well, I don't know that, I don't know you can do that because, there's not that many hours and effort in the day, but I mean, it's just the process of trying to manage that and still, produce, these kinds of comments, all right, this kind of performance. It's pretty impressive.
Joan?
This goes back several years ago when we were not even in this building, we were still in the older Algonquin. And there was a study that was done at the central office. And it was always noted that we don't have enough manpower in the office, but it was something we couldn't do by our budgets. And then we would always look at other regional districts. And if you look at other ones, they will have maybe several assistant superintendents, and we still only have 1 assistant superintendent. And
So it's really Greg that makes the difference,
It is
because he's
Greg.
only one person, I get it, okay.
But,
Now I understand.
and we have
Now I
always,
understand, now I understand.
what we've always said, I think through all evaluations, is that the number of hours and the demands on the job and, of 3 districts versus just having 1. And we don't, and we've tried to, and we brought in different, like a budget manager to come in, something like that, to help out, but it still is not always enough. When we were below where we should have been before the school was even built. So,
Yes.
I would just like to say thank you. It is truly a privilege to be part of this district. It always has been. I am honored to be superintendent and very proud to say that I am superintendent of the public schools of Northborough, Southborough, and Algonquin. And while it is probably more complex and challenging than a single district, in fact, my colleagues will say, "What are you, crazy?" And I always reply the same way, that when you have such incredible staff, teachers, right-hand people, left-hand people, late. See, he's always there to tell me. Always has.
Always got your back.
To have such amazing folks in central office who also have likewise the same challenge. It isn't just the superintendent who tries to juggle the blue, the green, and the yellow, otherwise known as Southborough, Northborough, and Region. It is, in fact, everyone at central office who has that challenge and that responsibility. And the students, the parents, the communities who so support the work that we do. When I put all of that together, I don't think anyone would trade this district and this configuration for so many of the single districts that are out there. It isn't the work, it's the joy in the work and the people that you find everywhere in this community to work with. So I thank you. You get to read my evaluation into record, but for every word on this paper, there are many, many people that helped that become a reality, and I thank them every day for the work. It gets dicey some days, but we get through it. And I'm just very appreciative to be here and to serve the communities.
And we clearly appreciate you. And the one good
Thank you.
thing about having one superintendent for 3 districts is at least we know you're communicating with all 3 superintendents. There's no communication gap there. With that, any other comments? Then would each of the committees, right? This is a roll call vote. Move to executive session. Do I hear motions?
Is it with intent to return to open session or not?
No
Region.
intent.
It's
The
on
regional,
agenda.
yes.
No, it's written on the
No.
agenda,
So we're going,
except for region.
Except for region.
except for region.
Don't we have to
So-
come back
so
to
for
open
some-
session to
Don't we,
vote?
yeah, don't we come
do.
back in open session and vote?
Yes, we have to.
So
come
we're
back.
just gonna change that.
Only the region comes back, correct?
No, no,
No,
no,
but
we're all
yeah,
gonna
we
come
have to
back
come back.
because we have to vote in open session after we
So you're
discuss
looking
for,
for each committee to move?
yes.
So for Southborough, I move that we adjourn to executive session to return to open session.
We have to say what it's for.
For-
Audra, it's on the, do you want me to say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to move for Southborough and the union to go to executive session to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel with intent to return to open session.
Second.
Moved by Mary Beth,
For
seconded
Southborough.
by Roger for Southborough.
I moved it for the union
Moved by Mary Beth for the union.
and Southborough.
And I'll
And-
second the union.
Jerry seconds for the union. Paul?
I'll move for the region.
Paul moves for the region.
I'll move for Northborough.
Joan moves for Northborough. Lynn seconds for the region. And Keith seconds for Northborough. And who seconded for union? Jerry did, okay.
Sure.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay.